Hi everyone, today let's talk about Trump media again. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Trump media cratered on their earnings report, and we talked about this likely happening already. They closed down 21% because the stock reported their earnings. Their revenue was just around $4 million, and they reported a net loss of $58 million, so massive loss as you would expect. It is a new company, so I'm not expecting it to be making huge amounts of money, although it would be nice if they did. But of course, they're following the growth story, spend as much money as fast as they can to get as many users as possible, and then attempt to convert those people into revenue later. But it closed around $48 after getting all the way up to $79. And even with that big drop, it's still worth about $6 billion, which is a massive valuation for the revenue and negative earnings that it's showing right now. So pretty interesting, continues to be fun to watch, and I still think this is a frothy valuation and a frothy market. Otherwise, let's scoot through the data here fairly quickly. Still extreme greed pretty much across the board. Breadth and extreme greed here now as well. Volatility still in neutral, but we did see a fairly decent step up there. And then safe haven demand still greed. Junk bond demand still extreme greed. And then moving over to seasonality, you can see pretty negative here for the Russell, which is what we got. Not quite positive yet for the NASDAQ, although it was positive on the day. Expecting a little bit of bullishness across both of these here up until the 4th, and then we'll see if we get that weakness mid-month. Otherwise, so far it seems like we're on track, sideways chop with a little bit of bullishness. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see ISM manufacturing PMI came in much better than expected, well above that 50 mark. I do think that that was pretty positive for markets. Manufacturing prices also going up a little bit there. Employment, not as good as expected, as well as global U.S. manufacturing, still above 50, but not as good as expected. So overall, still on the growth side except for employment. And then looking at tomorrow, not a whole lot on there except for the JOLTS report. Obviously, the JOLTS report does have a major impact. And the jobs market has been very strong, so that'll be interesting to see tomorrow. And then for Wednesday, we do have CPI for the Eurozone, ADP non-farms, always interesting, and then quite a bit more economic data. We'll see how that plays out. Services expected to be positive, as well as non-manufacturing PMI, all expected to be pretty strong numbers. And if those come in at expectation, that should be bullish for markets. Moving over to Max Payne, you can see it does look like a neutral week. We have really strong call walls here at 527, 529, and 535 now, as well as 536. So tons of calls in the market already. Put side all the way down at 500. We have some here at 510, but really anywhere in between there seems to make sense. 515 to 520, and that's basically where we're at, 521.70. So between those two levels, that gives you about a 1% downside potential. Put call ratio way lower than what we've been seeing, 1.36. We saw numbers all the way in the 4 area on some of these previous charts. Now we're all the way down into the 1s for the end of this week. And I think that is starting to open the door for a little bit of weakness, potentially all the way down to that 510 area. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps, you can see we gapped up massive, tried to break that level, couldn't do it. Sold off pre-market, ended up opening below that level, and then sold off almost to the next one, 520.88, bounced a little bit, but you can see we're below all the short-term EMAs and VWAP on the hourly chart, so a little bit of bearishness. You can see we're still above the 144 there at 520.49. Didn't get anywhere near testing it, so 520.88 is still your current support. In terms of structure on the daily chart, nothing has really changed. Still at resistance, still above all the EMAs and SMAs. Slight bearish momentum right on top of the RSI SMA. So nothing has really changed on the longer term thesis, but a little bit of consolidation here on the shorter time frames. Moving over to the 4-hour chart here on the Tasty charts, you can see same structure. Gapped up right to that upper ATR, which was at 425.98 when it touched it, and then it did move up a little bit here, 426.76. Basically no volume on the day, slightly bullish on the volume weighted MACD, which is good. You got your ATR stop here right at that 520.50 area, 520.45. Need it to hold that level, otherwise we're going to get a little bit of a change in conditions. You can see that hasn't meant a whole lot recently. You can see we did break it here, got bearish conditions, which did hold a little bit, and then we got some flip-flopping. So we had bullish conditions here, bearish conditions again as we broke down to that lower ATR, and then we pushed right through that, and we've been bullish since then. So overall, again, still slightly bullish, but continuing to find resistance at that upper ATR band. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see similar thesis, sideways chop, tried to break on the opening candle, couldn't get there, and then sold off right back down to the 144. Still very much a consolidation. You can see we've been flat for basically 6 days at this point. Got here on the open of the the 21st, and then we are still testing that same area here on the 1st of April. So sideways chop, slightly positive on the day, 0.21, still at resistance, 446.66, and I didn't chase any of this, just left all my positions till expiration, which turned out to be pretty decent. And then I did play for a little bit of upside as it's been holding that 144, and that has rolled up here on the hourly chart up to 443.99, so that puts it right at my support level, 443.91, and we'll see if this level holds, push up to that 446 and maybe finish closer to that level. Might give some potential for more upside tomorrow. You can see we're still holding the SMA on the daily chart RSI as well. Still slightly bearish momentum, but really very little, not really giving us a good indicator there. Overall, consolidation still looks a little bit bullish in my opinion. And then moving over to the 4-hour chart here on the Tasty charts, you can see very similar thesis to the SPY, but not quite. Didn't get up to that upper ATR level. Just hit the first ATR band and then sold off right back into the middle of the range. We've been in the middle range for a while, continuing to show bullish conditions, bullish ATR stop at 441.61. So that does give you a little bit of downside potential. But again, you can see that 55 EMA here on the 4-hour chart continues to hold its support. Tested it here on the 27th, and then we tested it again here on the 1st. So far, it's been holding. I think we're probably going to hold that and see at least one more spike up. And you can also see that the volume-weighted MACD is showing some bullishness as well. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell was down a lot on the day, 0.94. Did hold support at 208.22, so we'll see if that holds up tomorrow. Still above all the EMAs and SMAs on the daily chart. Looking at the hourly, however, you can see we gapped up to my level, 212.10, touched it, and then sold off, so that was not a great indicator. I knew we would get to that level, at least I thought we would, but I was really hoping we would get above it and break, and that did not happen. So tested it, pulled back again, holding support, and this would be a higher low hold if it does hold, and I do think that it will. I'm still bullish overall on the Russell, at least in the short term, but this was a pretty powerful rejection. You can see some volume coming through as it fell, which is not great. Want to see it hold here and push back up. And then looking at the Dow, also selling on the day, 0.61, continues to find rejection at that trend line. Hit the level here, sold off, and then we continue to test that level and sell off. Still holding support, so nothing has really changed, but really hasn't been able to accelerate to the upside here recently. Moving over to Truth Social, you can see that big selling that we got today, 21.47, momentum rolling to the downside, RSI selling off. If you can even really judge this based on technicals, it's been a crazy move. You can see this big candle here, 35%, another big candle getting all the way up to that 79 area like we talked about, and then we've sold back off into that 48 area. Really right back into this consolidation. It's actually on the consolidation highs. So if you liked it, this might not be such a terrible level right in that zone. See if it holds. You also have the highly traded zone. Touch that right to the penny there at 45.24. See if that holds up. And obviously, I'm not suggesting this is an interesting stock for any kind of trading by any means. I just think it's fun to watch. Moving over to the Mag 7, we did find a slightly positive day, 0.5. You can see momentum in RSI still bearish, finding some support at VWAP and the 21 EMA. Support here was 354.54, caught a slight bounce, hit the trend, hit 9 EMA to the upside, still found some rejections. So sideways chop for 2 days in a row. We'll see how that plays out. Again, I still think the Mag 7 needs to go higher if markets are going to go higher. If this zone breaks, it's going to be pretty critical, and I think it's going to take markets with it. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see both of them holding up a very similar structure on this very short support line. It's been important here. You can see we've touched it 3 times on Tesla, a bunch of times here on Apple, and below this, there's a bunch of room. So these could both fall quite a lot if they do not hold this zone. You can see even zooming out here on Tesla, next lower level 152.54, Apple 165.71. And then below that, there is a lot of room on both of these. You can see just how far these could go if these structures continue to break down here. I do think it's very important. They have been holding it so far, but this does not look great. Apple down 0.85, Tesla down 0.32, and Apple closing right on the low does not look good either. Tesla looks a little bit better, finding some rejection from that area, but either way, both of these look bad in my opinion. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, you can see staples down 0.8. Discretionaries 0.75, both of them selling off. We talked about this on staples, found this as a resistance area. Probably need to add another trend line here. We'll see if this continues to hold as support. Go ahead and add that there. You can see right at these lows, very close to here. We'll see if that holds. Closed right on the low for staples, does not look good. Momentum and RSI both bearish. Still above the 21 and VWAP. You can see that's held the last 2 times we've tested it. We'll see if it holds again. And then looking at discretionaries, selling off here again, still cannot get above 185.36. So that continues to look bearish from that level. Momentum selling off, RSI selling off, volume accelerating on that down move. So overall, both of these look bearish, and staples actually sold more than discretionaries, which is unusual. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth, you can see both of these selling off massive again. So we got into that same zone, didn't even quite hit the level at 86.53, sold off big, right down to the 9 and 21s, VWAP and RSI selling off. Similarly here on the 50-day, hit the level 83.83, sold off. Still above all the EMAs and SMAs on the 50-day, but again, momentum RSI selling off. So we'll see how this looks tomorrow. Could just be another slight pullback to support and then continue to hold this 21 EMA. 20-day breadth could push down to the 55 and still structurally be intact. That's what held here on this most recent dip low, and then we'll see if it pushes. But right now, starting to look like a bit of a roll, just taking a long time to do it. And I'll continue to monitor this over the next couple days. Moving over to the 2-year and the 10-year yield, we did see a pretty big spike here today. Pretty interesting. Up 1.61 and 2.54%. We'd been kind of consolidating for a while, saw a push back up here, didn't break any of these previous highs or anything, still right at that 144 EMA, still well below the 200, but saw a little bump here, see if this accelerates or not. Similarly here on the 10-year, pushed up to the 144, still below the level, but showing some strength off of a support line. Momentum on both of these bullish, RSI on both of them bullish. That would be a higher low setup off of these previous lows for both of these charts, and we'll see if this starts to push a little bit higher. If it does, I think that's going to be slightly bearish. Moving over to the dollar, this continues to be super bullish as I expected. You can see here on the Thursday we got above the level. Monday here we got a big leg up, 0.41%, took out these previous highs, and we are already up more on the Tuesday candle, pushing towards that 105.5 level. We'll see if it can get there this week. And if this dollar continues to accelerate to those higher highs, you can see the low, higher low, and we had that high, looking for that higher high. We'll see how that plays out, and I do think that that will also be bearish for markets. So dollar heading higher, yields heading higher, and markets are still hanging in there pretty well, but if this accelerates, I think that's going to be bearish. Moving over to bonds, bonds sold off as you would expect with yields going higher. Pretty interesting to see them going that much higher off of that PCE that came in line with expectations. So a little bit aggressive. Again, it could go higher, but it didn't break any major levels. We'll see how it plays out. Bonds selling off. You can see we're back below 92.82. Very interesting, but I'm really watching that 144 EMA there at 92.39. Still holding that level. You also have some trend support down around 92.08. Critical zones here, momentum and RSI both bearish on both of these charts. We'll see how this plays out tomorrow. Need it to hold here if it's going to do it. If this structure breaks, that's going to be quite bearish, and that should take equities with it. Moving over to volatility real quick, we saw a move jump a lot, so that's pretty interesting. We'll see if this can continue, at least to that 21 EMA. That would be up around 98.45. That means that bonds should be going lower, at least for one more day. And then looking at the VIX, gap up, big wick to the 55 and the 21. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but it did break here on the SMA, momentum rolling to bullish. We've seen this a couple times, big wicks here, sold off again, but it is coming off of a key level of support, so that's interesting as well. Big trend line. See if it gets any follow through. You got the 200 sitting right there as well at 1463, so I don't really expect it to go too much higher from current levels. Moving over to my accounts just for a moment, you can see I pretty much just rolled all the same positions out a little bit. So I had 209 for today on the IWM, rolled that out for 2 days from now. IWM was down at 208.28. I am slightly bullish on the Russell, so I did hold that strike. Gave myself a little bit of room here for the Russell to recover a little bit. And then looking at the Qs, you can see the Qs finished almost at 445, but they did sell off quite a bit after hours. I am here at 445 for $1.11 and $1.10. Like I said, I wanted to be a little bit more bullish on those positions. We were at a critical support and it did hold, so that should give it some legs. So I gave myself some room. We'll see how it plays out in tomorrow's session. But overall, a little bit more bullish here today than I was yesterday, even with some of those major market indicators showing some bearishness potential coming tomorrow. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of Truth Social. Are you even watching it? Is it just entertainment? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.